The coastline of La Guaira, usually defined by the rhythm of incoming waves and the steady flow of commercial aircraft descending toward Maiquetía International Airport, carries a different weight today. The view begins like any ordinary morning. An extreme wide shot of the harbour, cranes frozen in place, ships quiet, and the airport situated beyond the shoreline like a gateway that has connected Venezuela to the world for decades. Yet this familiar landscape is now overshadowed by a single dramatic declaration. The President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, has warned that Venezuela's airspace should be considered closed. It is a statement that ricocheted instantly through diplomatic channels, aviation networks, shipping companies, and the Venezuelan public itself. It also marks the sharpest escalation yet in a tense standoff between Washington and the government of Nicolás Maduro, whose hold on power has been fiercely contested both domestically and internationally. As the camera drifts over the harbour toward the airport, the sense of normalcy collides with a palpable undercurrent of uncertainty. Maiquetía International Airport, officially Simón Bolívar International Airport, has long been the entry and exit point for millions of Venezuelans, especially during years of political crisis and economic hardship. Today, its runways appear calm, the tarmac bathed in soft daylight. But behind this calm lies a nation on edge. The very idea that Venezuelan airspace could be deemed closed by a foreign power raises not only legal and political questions, but also existential ones. What does this mean for commercial aviation, for Venezuelan sovereignty, for regional stability? The camera shifts to a wide shot, taking in the airport in full. This is one of the busiest travel periods of the year, yet traffic appears lighter than expected. Some planes rest motionless, their doors open as ground crews go through routine procedures, refueling, unloading luggage, completing checklists. But even routine action seems strangely weighted, as though every movement takes place under the invisible pressure of geopolitical tension. The US warning is not a formal declaration of a no-fly zone, nor is it an official blockade. But the language, should be considered closed, has injected ambiguity into the airspace above Venezuela, creating a grey zone where pilots, airlines, and international regulators are now scrambling for clarity. Aviation experts say such language can trigger immediate insurance complications. Commercial airlines rely on complex risk assessments, and if insurers determine that flying over a certain area constitutes a dangerous or uninsurable risk, routes can be suspended instantly, even without a formal order. That possibility is already being felt today. Some flights have diverted, others have announced precautionary re-evaluations. Ground staff at Maiquetía are watching arrival boards flicker with delays and unexpected route changes. For a country already struggling with isolation, the threat of losing additional connectivity is a heavy blow. As the camera moves in for a close-up of the terminal, the architecture of the airport, once considered modern and ambitious, looks tired but resilient, a symbol of a nation that has withstood years of sanctions, political upheaval, and economic freefall. The close-up magnifies the airport's vulnerability. This building, these runways, this coastal strip have become the latest stage of a geopolitical confrontation playing out far beyond the perimeter fence. Then, the lens turns toward a plane touching down on the runway. The wheels strike the asphalt, sending a brief puff of smoke upward. It is a small but symbolic moment. A plane landing indicates that, at least for now, the airport remains operational, despite the geopolitical storm. Yet even this routine landing feels different. Will this continue tomorrow? Next week? Are these among the last flights to land before international carriers decide the risk is no longer worth taking? Inside Venezuela, reactions have been swift and polarized. Supporters of Nicolás Maduro denounced the US statement as yet another attempt at coercion, a violation of sovereignty, an act of intimidation aimed at destabilizing the government. Venezuelan authorities insist that they, and they alone, control the nation's airspace. The Information Ministry has already begun framing Trump's declaration as part of a broader campaign to weaken the country's institutions and create fear among the population. Maduro's opponents, meanwhile, view the episode differently. Many argue that the US warning is a direct response to what Washington claims are security threats associated with the Maduro government, including alleged links to narco-trafficking networks and the presence of foreign military advisors inside Venezuela. Trump's administration has repeatedly accused Caracas of allowing criminal activity to flourish within its borders, while Maduro's government maintains that such accusations are manufactured to justify foreign intervention. The landing aircraft rolls toward the terminal, its engines slowly winding down. The camera catches another close-up, this time of multiple planes lined up after landing. Even stationary aircraft seem part of the unfolding drama. Some carriers have already begun internal discussions about temporary route suspensions. For passengers who rely on these flights to reunite with families, transport goods, or flee economic hardship, the uncertainty can feel devastating. The geopolitical backdrop to this moment is complex. The relationship between Washington and Caracas has been fraught for decades, but tensions have intensified dramatically following a series of US sanctions, diplomatic expulsions, and public confrontations. In recent months, the US has grown increasingly vocal about alleged military cooperation between Venezuela, external actors, including Iran and Russia. Trump's administration has framed these concerns as matters of hemispheric security, emphasizing that instability in Venezuela poses risks that extend far beyond its borders. Maduro, on the other hand, argues that Venezuela is the target of a prolonged campaign of economic warfare aimed at forcing regime change. He has repeatedly warned that the US seeks direct control over Venezuela's oil reserves, the largest proven crude reserves in the world. His government portrays Trump's statement about the airspace as another step down the path of escalation, a psychological tactic meant to sow panic and uncertainty. But the reality on the ground is often more subtle than political slogans suggest. As the camera pulls back for another sweeping view of the airport and harbour, the ordinary reality of the scene contradicts the gravity of the international conversation. Workers continue their shifts. Trucks carry supplies across the tarmac. The sea moves rhythmically, indifferent to political tensions. Life goes on. Yet beneath this daily rhythm, there is an undeniable sense of anticipation. Venezuela's aviation authorities have called emergency meetings. Pilots and airline staff are waiting for updates from international regulators. Diplomats are contacting one another behind the scenes, trying to understand whether Trump's warning signals an upcoming US operation or a strategic message intended to pressure Caracas without military action. Within the international community, reactions are mixed. Some governments are urging restraint, warning that any escalation involving airspace could quickly spiral into broader conflict. Others argue that the Maduro government's refusal to allow international oversight of its air transport operations has raised legitimate concerns. The Organization of American States has called for clarity, urging both sides to avoid taking steps that could endanger civilian aviation. Meanwhile, in Venezuelan households, the news has sparked anxious conversations. Maiquetía International Airport is not just an airport, it is a lifeline. For families with members abroad, for migrants who travel between cities and borders, for businesses that depend on cargo flights, the idea of airspace restrictions triggers fears of deepened isolation. Venezuela has experienced waves of migration in recent years, and the airport has often been at the center of these emotional departures. The camera lingers on the coastline, capturing the sparkling water near the harbor. This serene setting stands in stark contrast to the international headlines now circulating. News channels worldwide are replaying Trump's statement, analyzing possible outcomes, and discussing scenarios that range from diplomatic standoffs to full airspace disputes. Each scenario carries its own risks and uncertainties. Experts warn that airspace is not just a physical domain, but also a symbolic one. Declaring an airspace closed implies a challenge to sovereignty, a questioning of who holds legitimate authority over the skies. If other nations interpret the US statement as a call to avoid Venezuelan airspace, the consequences for aviation could be immediate and severe. Yet, for the moment, planes continue to land, as captured in the footage. In the broader context of US-Venezuela relations, this moment fits into a pattern of escalating pressure. Trump has previously announced expansions of U.S. naval operations in the Caribbean, increased sanctions on Venezuelan institutions, and warnings aimed at foreign companies operating in the country's oil sector. Venezuela, in turn, has bolstered its rhetoric, strengthened ties with Russia, China, and Iran, and conducted military exercises near its borders. Each action reinforces the perception that the standoff is deepening. As the camera returns to a distant view of the airport and harbour, the contrast between the calm visuals and the tense political climate becomes the defining theme of the moment. Ordinary scenes become symbolic. A plane landing becomes a statement of continuity. Ships anchored in the harbour become metaphors for a nation waiting to see its next chapter unfold. For now, Maiquetía International Airport remains open. Flights arrive, passengers disembark, and cargo is moved. But uncertainty looms. Airlines will soon make independent decisions based on risk assessments, insurance coverage, and diplomatic signals. Aviation regulators will weigh legal implications. Governments in the region will monitor whether the US intends further action. In Venezuela, citizens will watch developments closely. Air travel is more than mobility. It is connection, to loved ones, to opportunity, to the outside world. The idea that this connection could be disrupted carries emotional and practical consequences that extend beyond politics. As the final wide shot of the harbour and airport fades, the underlying message becomes clear. The struggle for Venezuela's skies is not merely about airspace, but about the future direction of a nation caught in geopolitical crosswinds. The views captured today may soon be remembered as a moment suspended between stability and a turning point. One in which the world held its breath, waiting to see whether Venezuela's airspace would remain open or become the center of a broader international confrontation. For now, life continues at Maiquetía, but beneath the calm surface, the country stands at the threshold of yet another uncertain chapter, shaped not only by the planes that land and take off, but by the powerful forces beyond its shoreline, deciding what the skies above Venezuela will mean in the days ahead.